A convict who escaped from Pentonville prison last week has been discovered hiding under his sister's bed in Ilford.
An Australian man has been taken to hospital after being held hostage by a goat. He is said to be in a stable condition.
A plan to build a huge mouse farm in a suburb of Melbourne in Australia has upset residents who fear copycat behaviour.
And headline of the week from the Plymouth Herald. Truro thinks it's big time because it has a Primark, but it doesn't even have a Nando's.
Welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as the News, coming to you from up the creek in Greenwich, London. My name is Dan Schreiber, and I am sitting here with Anna Chazinski, Andrew Hunter-Murray, and James Harkin. Once again, we're here to present to you the most interesting stories we found in the news of the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go. Starting with you, Andy Murray.
My fact is that, as president, Donald Trump will earn 1/12,000th as much as he did as a baby. So Donald Trump did an interview after he won the election where he said that he won't take a salary or that he'll take $1 a year because he thought you had to be paid something and that's the minimum you can take. As it happens, as a baby, his father paid into an account for him in a sum of roughly $12,000 a year at the time, which was 4 times the income of the average American family.
Wow.
So, and yet he overcame those odds.
You would assume with the upbringing he had, a very affluent family, that he wouldn't have done any jobs as he was growing up. But he used to do a paper round.
Did he?
Yeah, so he used to go around his neighbourhood delivering papers. But I guess this is where the affluent family side does come in. If it was raining, the family chauffeur would drive him.
His first Trump Tower came when he was quite young. According to his book, The Art of the Deal, he was building a tower with building blocks as a child, and he ended up using all of his blocks and so stole the blocks off his brother. He said, "When I was done, I'd created a beautiful building. I liked it so much that I glued the whole thing together, and that was the end of Robert's blocks."
Didn't he punch a teacher in the face?
Yeah.
Yes, he did. And the teacher was called Charles Walker. The teacher died last year, but just before his death, he was in a hospice on his deathbed, and someone in his family told him that Trump was considering a run for the presidency. And he said to his family member, "When that kid was 10, even then, he was a little shit."
All 10-year-olds are little shits, to be fair to him. I certainly was, and I'd be a great president. So.
But now that we have a reality star in the White House, or we're going to have, the bookies have slashed a load of odds on certain celebrities becoming the next president in 2020. So Tom Brady, who's the New England Patriots quarterback, is 66-1. At 100-1, you can get George Clooney, The Rock, or Kanye West. And they are all 100-1, and that's compared with Jill Stein, the leader of the Greens, and Gary Johnson, the leader of the Libertarians, actual politicians who are 200-1.
So he's been asked a few things over the past week, hasn't he? And the Wall Street Journal reported on his meeting with Barack Obama that he had this week. And insiders are saying that it turns out Trump is surprised by the scope of the president's job. Obama's being very helpful, isn't he, to Trump? So one of the things they're going to do is have 2 wargaming exercises, which sounds like they're going to be playing Call of Duty together. They're going to, I guess, simulate a little bit of war-type behaviour to make sure that Trump knows what to do in emergency situations. But the transition is often really bad between presidents. So I like, in particular, the transition from the Clinton to Bush administration, 8 months into Bush's presidency. This was on September the 11th, 2001. Bush's chief of staff got a call from the former chief of staff, who was supposed to show them all the ropes, didn't even introduce himself, immediately said, Do you know about the bunker? The bunker in which George Bush did all of his post-September the 11th planning, the bunker in which the president is supposed to retreat to do all of his secret defence stuff, and 9 months into the presidency, this guy was like, sorry, did I tell you guys about the bunker?
So there is a group of people on Earth who do not know the result of the election, and it's people in North Korea. So as of Tuesday morning, nobody in the population of North Korea knew that Trump had won the election. Really? Hadn't been announced.
What? Really?
Yeah.
You would think that they'd be loving it.
I
You know what I
know,
mean? Like
but-
the Russian media, for instance, are saying, oh, this is really funny.
Yeah. But it took 3 days when Barack Obama was elected for the North Korean media to announce to the population that, and it was in a tiny, it was like kind of the amusing and other news bit of the news. So,
There was a guy going around America who the newspapers were saying is the last man in America to find out who had won the election, because he was so annoyed with how much discussion was going on in the lead up to it that he thought, I just don't even want to know the winner now. So there's photos of him on the street wearing headphones, wearing a sign that just says, I don't want to know, don't tell me who won the election. And he's going to try and make it to 2020.
No.
So, yeah. But yeah, so one of the things is the wall, which he's been talking about, which is he's going to build the wall, and now he's saying it might be part fence. And then a lot of other people in the Republican camp are going, it might actually also just be a virtual wall.
Well, I like the way that Farage, of course, has said that we need to mend fences with Trump, which sounds like a very junior partner of the relationship.
Also, that was bizarre, that quote, because you don't build a fence to connect you to someone else.
it's as though he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Farage has been the first UK politician to meet Trump, hasn't he? And he was there with a load of people from UKIP, and Raheem Kassam, one of them, took a photo of them and tweeted it, calling their team the Brex Pistols.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty cool name, though, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool name.
If you didn't dislike them, you'd all think that was really awesome.
Yeah.
I swallowed a little bit of sick when I read that.
We've actually got a picture of when Trump and Farage did meet, and they met fortuitously in front of this completely golden diamond.
Two men of the people.
OK, we should move on to our second fact of the show, and that is Anna Chazinski.
My fact is that the past week has seen riots, vandalism and road blockages across India as people protested salt shortages, even though there haven't been any salt shortages. So this is just this really weird rumour that started in India last week. I think by Friday it had reached kind of quite a peak, and it was across all the states of India. People were panic buying, so salt was selling for at least 4 or 5 times the price as people realised that everyone was flocking to buy it. Mobs tried to loot grocery shops. Armed police had to disperse panicking crowds. Apparently they cane-charged crowds, and I don't know what that means, and I couldn't really find out, but there were pictures of them holding canes, so I guess they'd do something with a cane.
Maybe they tickle them with it.
Yeah, this happened on Saturday. The government had to release an official statement saying that salt was available in adequate quantities in every single state. There are no shortages. Announcements had to be made from mosques, from temples, from district patrol vehicles saying, it's OK, guys, we've got plenty of salt.
Well, they would say that. I say, go out and get more salt now. So we should say the cause of why there have been these salt shortages. It's all linked to an economic measure that the government of India have just made, which is all 500 and 1,000 rupee notes have been declared invalid overnight. So they've been completely cancelled. And the amount of money that is, because India is basically a cash economy for almost everybody, is 86% of the value of all banknotes has been wiped out overnight. So you can go to a bank and you can hand over your old notes and they will replace them with lower denomination ones, but there have been massive queues, obviously, and the reason they've done it is because they think a lot of people have illegal stores of cash, and this is to try and kind of wipe out the illegal stores of cash that people have been reserving. Because the government did do a study in 2013 and found that the percentage of all Indian people who paid income tax was 1%. So anyway, so often people turning up to buy a house will turn up with literally a suitcase full of 1,000 rupee notes.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why they had to do it so quickly, and that's why there's been this panic, because it was literally overnight last week, wasn't it? Because if you gave them too much warning, then holders of what they call black money would be able to dispose of it. So it had to be a really surprise, guys. None of your money's worth anything.
But it's been so bad for families who, like, for example, the wives, will be hiding and stockpiling money away from the husband just to save it. So all of a sudden, the husband's like, what's that suitcase? Where are you going? Like, oh, this whole thing. And it's years of money that they've been hoarding underneath their bed.
And they've come up with a few different ways of getting around it, have they? For that very short time when they were still legal tender before they went out, there was one man in Delhi walked into a mobile phone shop and offered to buy every iPhone in the store for 3 million rupees in cash. There was a politician who went into a shop and bought gold ornaments worth 20 million rupees.
Oh, yeah, I think gold's been bought up a lot.
Yeah, the price of gold went up by 67% overnight. A builder in Delhi paid his daily wage workers 2 years of advanced salaries in the old notes so that they had to get rid of it and he didn't have to get...
That's terrible.
What a dick! It's not all bad news, though. The police in the western Indian city of Pune have registered no incidents of home break-ins since this happened because the robbers just assume there's no cash that's worth stealing in there, and so they're just not breaking into houses.
Oh, yeah, the robber situation's really odd. I read one account where someone said that their wallet was stolen. The person came back, having realised they had only the 2 notes that had been cancelled in their wallet, handed it back to them and slapped them on the face.
They're going to collect 22 billion banknotes by doing this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is going to work. I think it's already working, actually. They've been quite positive about it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because India actually has already a banknote that is worth nothing. And it's called the 0 rupee note. So it's not an official note. We have a photo of it here. This is the 0 rupee note. And this is a note that's been handed out. There's about 3 million in circulation because so many bribes were happening from government officials towards the members of the public that a group called the Fifth Pillar said, we're going to combat this and we're going to create an anti-bribe note so that when you're asked for a bribe, you hand them the 0 rupee and they get a sort of scare like, oh, it's the 0 rupee tribe. And so
I don't know that's not going to work.
Is that not how it works?
Easily frightened a corrupt police officers.
If you say, I want a 100 rupee bribe, and they gave you a 0 rupee, you're not going to go, oh, you're going to go, well, you're still 100 short.
Yeah. The idea is that it is meant to put a moral sort of feeling within the person trying to bribe you to think, oh, I am trying to bribe, this is bad, I shouldn't be doing this, and change their ways.
I like that idea.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Quite nice.
Yeah. OK, we have to get a move on very soon. You guys got anything before we do?
One more thing about new money. So we've obviously got our new £5 notes in this country, and there are English £5 notes and there are Scottish £5 notes, which are different, that have just come in. And it's been specially designed. It took 1,000 members of the public were consulted to work out what the design for the Scottish £5 note should be. It's got loads of really cool features, like it's got this poem written in Gaelic, where if you hold it under UV light, you get the English translation.
Wow.
But the thing I like most is that it has 2 mackerel on it, because mackerel is the fish that I think is most profitable to Scotland, and they were drawn by an artist called Stuart Kerr, a Glaswegian artist, and Stuart Kerr has a severe fish allergy, and he said that he had to draw the images from life. And so when he drew the images, he had to get an assistant to hold a mackerel up while he drew it, while also trying not to breathe at the time. So every time you see a Scottish £5 note, think of poor Stuart and the sacrifices he made.
That's amazing. OK, we are halfway through the show, and it's time to look at the stories that you sent in to us via emails and social media, starting with you, Anna.
Yep, this was sent in by David Smith on Twitter, and it's from BBC News Leicester, and it's the fact that Leicester City Council has had to explain that their Christmas tree was left half decorated because the tinsel they'd used was too heavy.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Or the tree was too weak. It really depends how you look at it.
Andy, what have you got sent in?
This is sent in from the Cambridge News by Richard Gray, and it's that Cambridgeshire police are investigating after a lorry was robbed last Wednesday of 2 full pallet loads of burglar alarms.
And James, what have you got sent?
OK, mine's from Katie Gibson on Twitter, and it's a piece of good news from the US elections. The Kentucky town of Rabbit Hash has voted in a pit bull as its new mayor. The dog beat off competition from a cat, a rabbit and a donkey. Voters were encouraged to drink at the polls.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to move on to fact number 3, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that the man who coined the term supermoon prepared for it this week by stocking up on bottled water, canned goods, and other emergency supplies. So this was coined by a guy called Richard Knoll, who is an astrologer, not an astronomer. So he's not a scientist. And when he coined supermoon, he thought of it as slightly quite a dangerous thing because he thought we're going to be hit by tsunamis, earthquakes are going to erupt all around the world. And so every time a supermoon happens, he tells everyone, get your car full of gasoline because shit's about to go down.
If you go to his website, he does what people can do who believe this kind of thing and provides all the statistics that you think you would need for that. So he suggests that these events are more common at times when a supermoon is out.
Right.
And he does believe that you can look back through the supermoons of the past and make correlations to events that have happened. My favorite one, 2 scientists worked out that a supermoon occurred on the night of the 4th of January, 1912. And they reckon that what happened was that the tides went up so high that they might have loosened beached icebergs, and those beached icebergs headed down. And 3.5 months later, collided with the Titanic. So the Titanic was sunk by supermoon.
Now, Dan, supermoon's been all over the front page of lots of newspapers, and it's been absolutely...
Front page is a strong claim you make, given that this is the week post-Trump's...
There's another big orange thing on the front.
Basically, some scientists pointed out the only way to really tell the difference between a supermoon and a normal full moon is to compare photographs of the 2 of them directly next to each other, because basically you can't tell. It's about 7% bigger than a normal full moon.
So we should explain also what a supermoon is.
Yes.
So a supermoon is basically when a full moon coincides with the closest point that the moon is at to the Earth. Another thing that astronomers complain about, actually, is the naming of a supermoon, which is officially a perigee syzygy of the Earth-Moon-Sun system. And so you can see why they went for the supermoon moniker. But, and this is the closest it has been because the moon's orbit varies month on month, year on year, and this is the closest it has been since 1948, I think.
Yeah.
Do you know how they measure? This is very cool. They measure using these things called retroreflectors, which are they're prisms left on the surface of the moon by American astronauts and I think a couple of Russian landers as well. And they're things where you fire a laser at them and they take the light in and they fire it directly back in the same direction.
Yeah.
And they tell you to within a few millimetres, basically, how far away or how close the moon is.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
how they know.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Actually, so I have a thing about retroreflectiveness and the moon, and I find this amazing. You've got a full moon, and then you've got a half moon. Now, compared to the brightness of the full moon, how bright would you say the half moon is?
Half.
Ah. You fell right into my trap. It's actually only 1/10 as bright. So it's so much brighter at full moon than it is even like a tiny, tiny bit either side of it. And it's because as the light hits it, it's got so many cavities and crevasses and craters and other C words on it that...
Not that one.
And the light bounces off all of them. I think it casts really long shadows, and so suddenly the moon goes really dark really fast. So that's why a full moon is much, much brighter than any other moon.
What's really interesting is there's this effect called the moon illusion. And the moon illusion is as it's coming over the horizon. And if you've ever looked at that, it always looks massive, right? It's huge. The moon illusion makes the moon look 50% bigger. So the Royal Observatory has been saying to people, don't mistake the absolutely massive moon that is 50% bigger for the real massive moon, which is 30% bigger. So actually, if you want to see a super moon, just look at the moon illusion as it comes up, because that's the biggest moon.
So but that's not officially a super moon. That's not a super moon, guys.
But if you,
that's just a big moon.
If you want to see a big moon.
So I looked at what happened last time the moon was as close as it is now in 1948. And there was an election around that time. It was Truman versus Dewey. It was one of the biggest upsets of all time. Virtually every poll was wrong. Many members of the winner's party had disowned the winner beforehand. The newspapers even printed leaders saying that Dewey had won, even though actually Truman had won, because no one could believe that he was going to win that election.
Where are you going with this, James?
All I'm saying is get a lot of canned food ready.
And at the time, 2-year-old Donald Trump was earning $12,000 a year.
Okay, we need to move on very shortly. Does anyone have anything before we do?
Yeah, I have one more thing. So this supermoon has had a major effect on all of us, actually, and it's something I think people should be more aware of, and that is it's caused us all to lose weight. So I got our astronomy researcher to work out that for the average 75-kilogram person, the supermoon will make them 40 milligrams lighter.
Yes!
And that's
I'm going to have an extra 40 milligrams of chocolate when I go home tonight.
So that's, of course, because its proximity means that it's imposing more of a gravitational pull on us than it usually would. So it's slightly pulling us away from the Earth, making us a little bit lighter. So we've all lost 40 milligrams, and that is about the same weight as the average sweetener tablet, or 16 ants. So eat one of those tonight.
Actually, all the ants will have got left heavy as well. So it's probably more like 20 ants.
Oh my God, that's a really good point.
OK, we're going to move on to our final fact of the show, and that is James Harkin.
OK, my fact this week is that the South Korean president is currently embroiled in a scandal about her closeness to an alleged shaman. The head of the country's national shaman organisation has complained that the scandal is giving genuine, hard-working shamans a bad name.
You bring shame in the family.
OK, so this is the South Korean president, Park Geun-hye, who last week had a disapproval rating in the country of 89%. She then went on television and gave a long, heartfelt apology, and her disapproval has gone up to 90%. And very, very basically and quickly, she's got an advisor called Choi Soon-sil, who's the daughter of a shaman, and it's alleged that she's been involved in kind of making a lot of decisions, even though she's not elected, and maybe even putting pressure on companies and stuff to give her money for her non-profit organisation, which she's been taking money out of. So it's a massive, massive scandal in South Korea, and the president is holding on by her fingernails at the moment.
Wow. The father of the woman involved in the current scandal convinced her that he could communicate with her late mother. So he said he was getting messages from the other side, and when he died, that ability supposedly passed to his daughter, Choi Soon-sil, who is now the close advisor who's got the president in so much trouble.
Yeah, I read in a Financial Times article, they said that when the daughter, Choi Soon-sil, came in to be part of Park's group, it said this one sentence, which is she brought her own advisors, including a music video director and a male prostitute. Like, that's just her crew.
Well, the FT also reported she had said, "I have committed an unpardonable sin," a statement her lawyer quickly denied amounted to an admission of guilt. It's good lawyering. But she also said, "I have committed wrongs for which I deserve to die," which, again, the lawyer's going to have a tricky time.
Wow. Well, she tried to deny it at first, didn't she? Because this actually came out at the end of October. And the way it came out is that journalists were going through her rubbish, I think, and they found a tablet computer in Choi Soon-sil's rubbish on which they found loads of incriminating evidence, like the fact that she'd edited Park's speeches and things like that. And Choi maintained that the tablet PC was not hers, and she'd never used it, didn't even know anything about it, even though it had 2 photos of her, including a selfie in a folder where selfies are automatically stored when you've taken them with that computer. But no, she kept up the pretense for a while.
Yeah, but now she's extremely unpopular. There's been massive marches. Her approval rating with South Koreans under the age of 30 is 0%.
Wow.
OK, and that's with a margin of error of plus or minus 3.5%.
So are you saying it could be minus 3.5%?
And these protests are huge. Like, in America at the moment, obviously there's protests against the election of Trump, but you look at the scale of what's going on there. They're talking, heading towards close to 1 million.
Do you know one of the groups who turned up to help with the protests? It was the legendary Korean punk band Crying Nut, who played their masterpiece, Run the Horse. And I had a look at some of Crying Nut's other songs. They are brilliant. They have done songs called Uncomfortable Party. Flaming nuts, and speed up losers. So they have been involved in the protests and helping to sort of cheer them on.
That's amazing.
Great.
If you go to the South Korean version of Poundland, which is called Daiso Asung, it's slightly better than Poundland. They sell things for about $4 each, but they're all the same price. They have a candlelit protest package that you can buy. It includes an LED candles, batteries, hot packs, blankets, raincoats, a first aid kit. So this is for people who are protesting, and they'd sold out in the early afternoon on the day they went on sale. So that is some bit of marketing, isn't it? But the shamans have come out and they said, we are very much not happy that you're calling this lady a shaman. She's given us a terrible name. Hundreds of shamans have signed a petition urging the media to cease describing her as a shaman. There are a lot of shamans in South Korea. It's a real part of their culture. According to the Shaman Association, they have 300,000 registered shamans in South Korea. That's one for every 165 people. Okay. Wow. And that's the same proportion in the UK as there are civil servants.
One thing they do is they put tridents into pigs.
I think it's to placate gods, isn't it?
It's to placate gods. It's to predict the future. And then people ask questions about, whether they should go for a promotion, if they're looking for a spouse, if they want to know if they're going to do well in an exam. And they do a lot of it via the South Korean equivalent of WhatsApp. You can just sort of text a shaman, basically.
So the scandal is taken in people from all different parts of South Korean culture. Prosecutors have quizzed bosses from Samsung, from Hyundai, the pop star Psy, who did Gangnam Style. Oh, that's him. He's this week distanced himself from the president of South Korea, although it feels like he should have distanced himself from another politician, I reckon.
We need to wrap up very shortly, so anything before we do?
I was having a look at other leaders who are influenced by people who have odd spiritual beliefs, and one of them actually is the chief minister in Tamil Nadu, and this is someone who has an astrologer who in 2001 told her it would be luckier to change her name. And so she is called Joyram Joylalita, and an astrologer in 2001 said it'll be lucky if you change your name to this. Joyram Joylalita. Apparently the extra A, that's what did it for her.
Was it lucky?
She's still in power, yeah.
I have one last thing, which is while I was Googling South Korea, obviously a number of North Korean stories came up. And there's a story that's in this week's news that North Korea has made a state request to officials in China, pleading for them to stop referring to the glorious leader, Kim Jong-un, as Kim Fatty III. OK, that's it. That's all of our facts. Just time to share with you some of the stories that we didn't have time to get to during this show. And we're going to start with you, Anna.
Yes, my fact comes from the Sunday Times this week. And this is that after guests at the summer ball at Durham University took drugs, openly had sex, frolicked naked in a pond and vomited on police officers, the organisers have blamed their champagne suppliers for sending bottles that were twice the normal size.
Andy.
This is from the Melbourne Age, and it's that the Australian Civil Aviation Safety Authority is investigating reports that a drone pilot has breached regulations by delivering a barbecued sausage to a man in a hot tub.
James, what have you got?
OK, mine is that the 8-foot trampolines available to buy on johnlewis.com come with the warning, never put live animals or pets on a trampoline.
OK, that's all from me, Andy, James and Anna. We'll be back again next week. This has been No Such Thing as the News. Goodbye.
And if you believe the supermoon sank the Titanic, please write to Dan Schreiber.
Please, somebody has to.
Good night.
Bye-bye.